never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.
Hi guys, welcome back to Neff Inspiration, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Another fantastic day for an interview. Today I've got John Graham with me. John is a man who over his lifetime tried many things and tried to do his best, and often enough things didn't work out for him as well. But what amazed me when I read about him was his perseverance, his resilience, his willingness to accept failure and learn from it, his insights into the privilege of being alive, and his realization that service to others can play a huge role in your own development and achieving a mission, a purpose, and running with that even late in life or later in life. And it's just amazing. There are so many lessons waiting to be learned here today from John. I can't wait to get digging in. Welcome to my show, John.
I'm very glad to be here. Thank you. And after hearing the introduction, I can't wait to hear what I have to say.
Oh, I like. See, and that humor, that depreciating humor, that is a sign of someone who has been around the block a few times and who doesn't take himself so serious anymore. And I think that is a beautiful thing. How young are you?
Today, I'm 76. Mentally, I feel like I'm about 46. I was mountain climbing last week, so I feel like I'm 96 physically.
Okay, I like that. Actually, I had a very active week and lots of walking and lots of hiking as well. So I feel it. My glutes are telling me where to go today. So we're in the same boat. But that's great. So obviously, you're not just developing your mind, you're also keeping your body active. And that is so beautiful to hear. Wow, 76. Have you figured out who you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah. Well, when I was in elementary school, I wanted to be Zorro, but then you had to ride a horse. So I gave up on that. So I still try to act like Zorro.
Excellent. And in fact, Zorro, for those of you out there who don't know, Zorro is a fictional character who is basically a man who goes after villains and takes their money and dishes it out. Basically, the Robin Hood of the English, Zorro would be the Spanish equivalent, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's
And
right. The mask and a mustache.
correct, correct. And famously portrayed with by Errol Flynn and many other swashbuckling, good-looking men in the past. Fair call. So the Zorro within you. Well, having said that, you did so many things over your lifetime. The Zorro didn't really come into the game until much later. What were you initially hoping to do? How did you tackle life?
Now, that's a very interesting question because I believe that many people were in my position, working class people. I grew up in the small mill towns around Pittsburgh, where you were assumed to go work in the mills,
Right.
and going to college was not something that most of us did. And I wanted at one point I wanted to be a minister, so I went to college to study psychology, but I came out of college with more questions than I had answers. And so I found that how could I give people answers that I didn't have myself? So here I was at 22 years old with a bachelor's degree and no direction. And through the next several years, I was a children's home counselor, a truck driver, a fireman, building contractor, a journalist. And then I even went back and tried to be a minister for several years and realized that, again, like I said before, I wasn't that good at it. So now I'm 53 years old with a life filled with what is perceived to be failures. And I felt like I never had a chance to get going because I didn't know where to go. I had no direction. In my background, we were never, my parents were not professionals, they were not educated. So we were just on our own.
Mm.
And I have found that many people are in that position. Because when Nancy Reagan said, just quit drugs, just say no, or we tell people, just get a job and don't be homeless. That's like saying, just fly to the moon. It's an impossible thing for some of us. And that's when I realized that maybe I can help somebody who's in my position, who's even in a worse strait. And so we opened our house. We bought an old house and remodeled it and opened it as a homeless shelter, trying to help somebody who was going through the same or worse struggles than we were. And I had a wife and 3 children at the time too. So it was not easy to remodel a house that was 150 years old while trying to live in it and with no money. But eventually, the Department of Corrections said, can you help us? We have people coming out of prison who are low risk but homeless, and they just need a place to stay temporarily. And we opened our home to one person, then another and another. And the Department of Correction actually funded us for that, a per diem. And that started Good Samaritan Home, which is a legal nonprofit organization. And we've grown since then to 19 houses.
Wow.
And today I have 10 staff, and we have upwards of 80 men and women in our houses. And so I feel that I've found my place simply by helping others find their place.
Beautiful. And it is wonderful to be of service to others. That has maybe been one of the key driving forces in my life to become a doctor, to be out there for others. Now, as a doctor, if you do the right things, then money is coming in. In a non-profit, it's all quite nice. There is a huge need out there. Let's not be silly. There's a huge need for people to do good and to make this world a better place, but no one wants to pay for it. So where did the money come from for you to actually feed your own family?
Well, my wife was worked at McDonald's. And so when we started Good Samaritan Home, we had no income literally for 5 years. So we lived on her income. And so I'll be quite candid, I give all the credit to her, because I don't know of many women who have put up with my, I want to say shit, but my slow walking to find my place. And it was, we are a team. That was the important part, because you can't do what we're doing, particularly in your own home, without being a team. And so what happened was that we were getting eventually some donations, but it was minimal. And the problem is, you're dealing with people coming from prison. It's not very popular. So the Department of Correction would fund us a per diem, not me, but the organization, Good Samaritan Home. And so we would get a few dollars every day, and we do not charge our residents. So they get free lodging temporarily, and they get free, they can go to the pantries and get their food. So, but what we provide basically is a safe, structured environment so that you can go out and get a job. And so we're not offering a handout, we're offering a hand up, a safe place. And so now we're able, with our having 80 men coming in per day, our per diem is enough that we can pay our staff, we can pay our mortgages, we can pay our utility bills. The goal is to break even. And we're able to do that because what happens is that because we're not doing it for money, we're doing it because it's a matter of our faith expression. Our faith dictates that we do this because it's the moral thing to do, not the profitable thing to do. And when you do that, I think you do a better job. And that's why historically, the church, when it's really on its game, has changed the culture with its acts of good deeds, its service to the community. Today, I think, this is a sidebar, but I think the church has lost that mission, and they've gone to telling people how to bend to their moral principles instead of saying, they're saying, are you saved? When you should be saying, are you hungry? And that's what we say, are you hungry? And that's my faith expression, asking that question.
That's beautiful. You could take this interview anywhere from here because, on the one hand, you have got your faith that has sustained you, yet not so many people nowadays have that same conviction. They have seen the negative side of the church. They maybe
Right.
have seen the really dark side of the church, such as sexual abuse or such as maybe just non-action at times when maybe the church should have acted, when the so-called church congregation and when everyone was happy clappy, when in reality they knew that the claps meant also that women were abused with family violence, domestic violence within their realms, but no one wanted to know, or no one felt able to do something about it. So on the one hand, we've got that faith. On the other hand, we have got so many people who feel let down or even betrayed by that. So faith alone, I'm not sure that we can hope on that. Or I'm pleased for you that you have got this drive, but that alone would make me more cynical rather than actually infused to help.
Actually, I'm very cynical as well, because this is the element of doubt is still there. I still question many things. And it's just, I go on the fact that what do I know instinctively is the right thing to do?
Mm.
And it's even though I'm trained as a theologian, I have my doctorate in applied theology. But the problem is, it's often, for most people, theologians are theoretical. Mine is an applied theology, so I don't ask the obtuse questions. I simply ask the simple question, and that comes back to, are you hungry? And actually, the word hospital, hospitality, hospice, derives from the Hebrew and Greek words for loving the stranger. And that's what we're trying to do. We're simply trying to treat the stranger as a welcome guest.
Beautiful.
And so that he becomes part of our community by meeting his needs, whatever that may be.
Huh. Wow. Uh, Having been a doctor and having been in hospitals all my life, I did not know that. So thank you for teaching me. And it puts a very different slant on things. I like that.
It
It,
also shows how far the church has fallen.
and maybe doctors and maybe the healthcare system. So maybe we can use the scarf and cut a broader stroke here. May I ask, though, there would have been not just these beautiful moments when someone actually gives you a hug and say, "Thank you so much. You changed my life. You gave me hope, and there was no hope for me." Uh, these are the moments that keep you going. But how do you deal with the many moments where maybe someone falls back into ways of escaping their reality with drugs, with alcohol, and then in turn maybe steals money from you? Or, I mean, the reality of social housing, I know very well, having um, been in the position to have free properties where I provided social housing. Um, I had quite a few renovation bills where someone just lost it, and
Right.
the holes that I had in the wall were quite impressive. How do you deal with that?
Part of the issue is that we go into it expecting that there are certain things that are going to happen. We're not going to, we don't judge success by saying he suddenly turned his life around and went out and became a manager at the factory and got married and had 3 kids and he was happily ever after. Basically, my goal is, where you did you look for a job while you're with us? And if you got a job, that means you're now a taxpayer. So my part has been completed. And if, so I set my goals quite low, in that success is defined as I offer temporary housing.
Mm.
And if I can do that and you don't want that, then it's not my loss, it's your loss.
Mm.
So I try not to, it's like a doctor in a cancer ward. He knows he's going to lose certain patients.
Mm.
It still hurts, but you
Mm.
have to let go. And I know I will lose certain clients,
Mm.
but I'm not responsible for that, even though I don't want to simply give up. I think the key is if somebody leaves us, and even if he offends us in some way, like you mentioned, breaking something or stealing something, if he were to come back and say, I've had a really hard time, can I come back? I always say, yes, we'll give you another chance. However, there are certain preconditions because it's not a carte blanche.
Mm.
And so, in other words, you have to be, like the Bible says, you have to be wise as serpents, but gentle as doves. You have to use your head as well as your heart. And so there's a constant mix between saying yes and saying no and knowing how to do that. But in general, what I teach my staff is that we are about that second chance or that third chance, and in some cases, that fourth chance.
Mm. Beautiful.
Well, the people we deal with understand punishment very well.
Mm.
But when you offer them mercy, when you offer them a second chance, it really disarms them. And they're just not prepared for that. And that's when I think we're most effective because they don't expect you to be kind when they know they deserve harshness. And so that to me gives me the kindness is actually very, very powerful. And forgiveness is probably much more powerful than violence.
Oh, 100%. No two ways around that.
Yeah.
I love your take on things, which is quite philosophical and actually quite wise. May I ask, I mean, you have got a high incidence of drug abuse in this population, often adverse childhood experiences, which are massive, backgrounds that are very challenging. How much is there an integration with social support with regards to maybe mental health support? I often feel that there is this divide between being in a punitive system on the one hand, on a mercy-like system such as yours, on the other hand, in the healthcare systems. There seem to be different silos that often are not so well connected. Is that different with you?
Well, we are partnered with the not just the parole department. They are the punitive end of it because that's their role. They're the policemen, so to speak. But we're also partnered with the reentry office, the local county office, and then also the Job and Family Services, which offers the social services,
Right.
and we are the housing element for that. So they provide the social needs, we provide the housing needs.
Nice.
Then together
Exactly.
we coordinate that. And the best example is that last week we had 7 men who they were adults. Some of them were well into their 60 years old, and they went through what's called a reentry program. They were taught how to fill out a job application. They were taught how to go to a job interview. They even given a list of where to apply. But they had 8 weeks in training, and this was done by the reentry office, not us. And then there was another agency that provided them with free clothing, a suit and tie for the interview. And so here's were 7 men, and some of them looked like they were very comfortable in jeans and sneakers and prison garb. And they were wearing a suit and tie, and some of them looked like they just stepped out of church. And one guy said, "I've never worn a suit before." And so they were so proud that they held up their graduation certificates and they felt like they had accomplished something.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, they didn't deserve all that treatment. They didn't deserve the suit. They didn't deserve the 8 weeks of training. But the county or the reentry office felt like it's not about deserve, it's a second and third chance so that you can become a taxpayer. You can be part of the community, not a pariah in the community. And
Beautiful.
the look in their eyes, in fact, I'm going to use it in my December newsletter because I was so impressed with them, and they were so impressed with themselves, and they should have been.
Beautiful. Ah, beautiful. And that is, I think, our privilege to be there for others. It is, however you look at your own personal development, however you look at your own misery, trauma, etc. It's often those moments when you can give back to society where suddenly things fall into place, when you are there for others, that something happens within you. A beautiful glow starts to appear, and that is an amazing, amazing thing. Um, you could, of course, also play devil's advocate here and say, are you not just focusing on others so you don't have to focus on yourself and focus on your own problems?
Is that a bad thing?
Touche. Okay.
Right now we live in a world where we're all focused on ourselves and saying, "Oh, woe is me! I have these issues. Let's talk about my problems." But maybe my old man was right. There are some things you just move on with,
Okay.
and we walked to school, and yes, we had to work after school, and yes, the house was cold, but we did okay. And maybe it's okay to have it hard sometimes.
I
And
like that.
but here's the key: as long as you keep trying,
Nice.
and rather than
Yeah.
commiserate and sit and sulk and sour, the whole theme of Good Samaritan Home is life is not a sprint. Life is not something where you simply run and you're okay. You just say no to drugs. That's not how it works. Life is a marathon,
Yeah.
and you have to keep running and running and running and running. And it's not how fast you run, it's that you keep running. And that's why I wrote my book when I was published it when I was 75 years old. And I've been wanting to write it for 50 years. But I kept writing notes and notes and notes until I finally sat down and now we're going to do it. And it was the hardest job I ever did. But yet when I was done, I felt like I had given birth to triplets, uh, or at least what I imagined giving birth was like.
Exactly. Oh, wow. Wow. Congratulations on that achievement, because here you went from homeless to a business owner to an established author. And that is a wonderful, wonderful journey, a journey that creates a lot of wisdom. And sometimes there's a saying that every single time an older person dies, a library burns down. And that is such a true
That's very
thing,
good.
isn't it?
Yeah.
There is so much knowledge and wisdom and insights that then is highly likely to be forgotten, isn't it?
I think what my wife and I find is probably our primary calling right now is to help our grandchildren because they are faced with questions and issues that you and I did not face, and these are issues that and confusions that you and I didn't face, and so they have to answer questions and make decisions that. Well, here's a silly example, perhaps, but my granddaughter had a tattoo, and I feel that a tattoo is something that is forever. And just because you love Bob today, you may not love Bob in 5 years. So I like to keep options open, and tattoos don't leave many options. Now, I'm not trying to offend your listeners out there who have tattoos, but it's just an example that uh, that children are offered questions and options that are permanent today, and drugs is permanent in many cases.
Mhm.
And today,
Mhm.
what we're seeing more, it used to be when I was growing up, it was marijuana. And then we only heard about heroin in the big cities among what we considered to be the outcast persons, the
Mhm.
poorest of the poor.
Mhm.
But heroin has become part of every community. And now it's fentanyl.
Mm.
And I would say that we're probably 50 to 70% of our residents, and many of them come from the middle class, but they started in drugs, and heroin was very easy, particularly as a painkiller
Mm.
through the oxycodone issue.
Mm.
And we've seen professionals, nurses, healthcare professionals who slipped into addiction, lost their license,
Mm.
ended up in prison, and they had at 50 years old they had to start over with nothing. So and it's not those people anymore, it's us people.
Mm. I think that is the amazing thing when you look really behind the curtain of your own misperceptions and prejudices. When you actually pull back the curtain and shine the light on the reality, then you will see that addiction is something that permeates the whole society. And we have some kind of perceptions that, I don't know, when you're rich, you do cocaine, when you're poor, you inject whatever trash. The reality is very, very different. 1 in 3 people are chemically addicted. And with that, I haven't even, if I now include, let's say, food as an addiction and the emotional overeating, then yeah, well, that's pretty much United States. Just we don't need to go any further. I think there are, we need to be clear that we are facing a huge crisis, certainly in the United States, but many other countries are only just a few years behind, where we are where your grandchildren are facing a reality that is virtually bizarre, like something out of a very bad B-grade film, for our understanding, for my generation, your generation. Things have changed dramatically. How can we, as simple human beings, how can you make a difference for your grandchildren? You can't stop the Chinese producing tons of trash fentanyl, getting into the Mexican cartels and getting it through a very open border into your country. So you can't change that. So what's your hope? I mean, are you not fighting like Don Quixote fighting windmills?
Ironically, that's the name of my publishing company, Don Quixote Press, because we all are tilting at windmills in some way. Uh, that's interesting. I think my grandkids said they, in one way or another, they've said that they view Kathy, my wife, and I as the one stable fulcrum in their life. They can float around us, but they know that we will be there. We've been married 47 years, and which in itself is a minor miracle because I was homeless when she met me, and she was working and had a house, and for some reason she saw in me something that nobody else saw, and in fact I was living in my truck when they repossessed it, so that tells you how desperate it was. Now there were people who told her not to marry me. Her pastor refused to marry us, and they were
Wow.
taking bets. They were taking bets that it wouldn't work. I swear to God.
Okay, that's
And
brutal. But then
yeah,
again, I mean, it's only brutal because you know the story and admit it as we speak. Probably people behind my back and people behind other people's back will do the same trash talk and the same. Ah, yeah, not
well,
service to
ironically,
others.
I would have said the same thing about me. So, but she saw something. I assume it certainly wasn't my money. She saw something that it was a shared vision of trying to make a difference. And now with our grandkids, we don't preach to the kids, we don't tell them, but basically after 47 years, they know that there is a stable marriage out there. And I like to call it the try to be Mr. Miyagi from the Karate Kid,
Yeah.
where you're simply that wise teacher who may not say anything, but the fact that you're there gives stability. And sometimes I often think that my best sermons are when I say nothing. And I just wish a lot of churches would learn that lesson.
Ouch. No, you're right. Well, wax on, wax off. And having said that, I mean, there is the silence is something that is missing in our lives. And not in the sense of the sound of silence or something negative, but the positivity of silence, the serenity, and the calmness that comes over you when you stop running on the treadmill, on your hamster wheel, but actually when you stop and meditate or involve yourself in deep prayer or just simply take some time out, suddenly things change and suddenly you get a different perspective. Similar as when you write your problem down on a piece of paper, put it in front of you, and then actually stand up, get on top of the chair, and now you're standing close to the ceiling looking down
Yeah.
on this tiny piece of paper. That's quite a good little exercise to sometimes think, well, actually, what's your perspective? Change your perspective and do something um, about it. And it's beautiful. So the silence, is that something that you are introducing the men and women who are living in your houses? Are there exercises as such included? Are there people who are modeling that kind of behavior?
Most of the people we deal with come from a home situation that is at best broken.
Mm,
They were either single mom, non-existent father, maybe
mm,
the grandmother raised them, or foster care through the children's home services. So they grew up with, at best, a battered view of family life. And so what we try to do is a very basic lesson, because if we were to try to teach family skills, it would never work. Say, for example, we were to sit down and say, let's work on your budget. And they would say, what is a budget? Well, you take your checkbook. I've never had a checkbook
oh,
nor a bank account.
sure.
So what we deal with is very simple. In the morning, I'm going to require of you to make your bed. And I want you to make your bed. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be clean every day, and pick up your clothes so that today, when you go out and look for a job and you get rejected 10 times and you're really dragging when you come in tonight, I want you to look at your bed and you know that you did something right today,
Yeah.
and you'll feel like your day was not lost. And that's a Navy SEAL lesson, where no matter what happens, at the end of the day, you have a made bed to come home to.
Oh,
It gives you
indeed.
control over a corner of your life.
Indeed.
And so, what we teach, ultimately, what we're teaching is a pronoun shift. They went to prison because they were saying me, I, and we're teaching them to say you, us. It's respect for your housemate, respect for the program, and that's the key to rehabilitation. Learning how to say us.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. So there are so many things that we actually can do and that we actually can implement. And I'm a very strong advocate for that. Even when life becomes really, really difficult and when the odds are stacked against you, if you are willing, then there are ways out. There is hope. We often, however, do not want to see it. We often do not want to accept that there is maybe a way out. We are just so consumed by ourselves and by our pity party that it is hard to move forward. Yet taking those tiny steps, these action steps, that is where you can gain some traction. That is where you can gain some hope. This morning, I really didn't feel great. Emotionally, I was down. And I thought, oh God, I have to do an interview. Oh God. And so I
Yeah, I know
went
the
down.
feeling.
So I went down and put the kettle on. And bottom line is, and there was still the washing up from last night. And I thought, "Arr." And I just did the washing up. I just did it. Took me less than 5 minutes, and prepared cut up some things for lunch later. And there I was. I had cleaned up. I had prepared some food. It was a win. And then the water had boiled. I made myself the coffee, and suddenly my mindset had shifted from poor me, towards, okay, what can I learn today from my guest? And then when I refocused on you coming on, I realized there's such a wealth of knowledge there just waiting. And that is by connecting with you, by me showing up. 80% of success is just showing up in life.
Yeah.
And that is so beautiful once we remind ourselves on that. And often it doesn't take so much to actually just show up. And suddenly you're amazed about what is coming, what is deriving from that, what is happening once you show up. Because you never know what the universe or God or whatever you believe in has in stock for you. And sometimes it takes a little bit. I'm 58. I'm restarting my life. The old life has burned like a phoenix and is truly in ashes. My whole old life is gone. And now I am ready to either give up, that's an option, or to actually say, okay, let's give that new phoenix a chance to rise. And for that, that means taking a deep breath, not losing hope, taking tiny steps, and acknowledging the wins, celebrating the little wins, and trusting that there is a purpose out there waiting for me, and that there's a mission out there that is worthwhile and where I can say I left a legacy. And I think that is so beautiful.
I just read an article in Atlantic magazine by David Brooks, and he said that his research has shown that most of the great artists, writers, and Cezanne, for example, paint artists, were late bloomers, and their greatest work started after 40. Some were after 50, some were in their 70s. And the idea is that there are those of us who we feel like we're so far behind what we call the normal people that the I call them the bureaucrats, people who they just do their job day to day, and they get a job at 20, they keep it till they're 45 or 50, then they retire and go to Florida. But there are those of us who want something different. We don't know what it is, so we end up making a lot of mistakes, but we still find that when we find our niche, then the art comes out. And that's why the truth is, I could not have written my book until I was 75 years old, because when I tried to write it at 25, I had nothing to say. And now the book is about people who are like me or like you. It's about a young man who struggles coming from a home where he had no family structure but abuse. His pastor sexually abused him, and he spent his growing up years in the 60s going from town to town to town in all that turbulence, looking for forgiveness and for love. And it wasn't until Daniel was well into his 30s that he found someone he connected with, his Kate. But that's not the end of the story. There's always the ups and downs in life. Mm. And Daniel's conclusion is at the end of the book is that it's in the keeping on moving. It's in the running. It's in the next day. Tomorrow can still be a better day, even though today was a terrible day. But what I've found is that people writing back who have read the book have said that they identified with it. They found it inspirational. They found it helpful. They said, you wrote about me. And that to me makes the whole effort worthwhile. If somebody else could say, I can make one more day because of Daniel. And that to me is what, maybe that's my whole purpose in life, to get here, was to help somebody else so they can get here too.
One more day, one more lap, one more moment. So true, so true. Wow. You're an amazing man, John. You have gone through a lot, and now to listen to your resolute way of not crumbling at an age where many others are basically just vegetating, just I wouldn't call it living, They might still have a lifespan ahead of them, but it's not life. It's misery span, we should call it. And here you are. There is a there's a passion in your voice. There is a conviction. There is an aura radiating from you. Where do you think that comes from?
Probably the backlighting.
See,
I set
depreciating
that up.
humor, depreciating humor. I love it. You're not
I will
taking
tell you
yourself too serious.
a little sidebar. I'm 76, and I travel to Texas frequently to do my writing. And I was in Texas, and there was a little thing in the paper said we're looking for actors for a television series with Harrison Ford. They need walk-ons. And so I put my name in and sent my picture, and I've got 20 cowboy hats. So I had a picture of me and a hat on, and I sent it in. And I'll be damned if they didn't write me back and say, we'd like to hire you. So I got a part as a walk-in. I was supposed to sit on a train and look like a 1923 Western man, on an upper class Western man. So they put me in this fancy 1923 suit, and they paid me $30. And here's the best part. Then they cut my scene. But the point is that I did something that was very uncomfortable initially, but I just went to have fun.
Excellent.
Because I'm not an actor. Don't want to be an actor. Actors are crazy. They're worse than writers. So, but it's if you don't try something, you'll never do something different. And that's why I put it on my resume. I'm a paid actor, but I'm not in Hollywood.
Yet.
Oh, yeah, right. That's funny. Now, I will tell you that the mind is very deceptive. And I allowed when I was laying in bed thinking about that, maybe Harrison Ford will ask me to do another part. Maybe he'll invite me out to dinner. Maybe. And that's part of my psychosis. And that's something I'm in counseling for, by the way.
Look at Anthony Hopkins. Look at many of the other amazing actors out there who started in their 60s or really made it big in their 60s, 70s. So who are you to say that you're not part of that? So come on.
With my luck, I'll probably get a scene as the old lady on the Titanic. So.
Ouch! Don't assume my gender. Stop it.
Yeah, we can do that now, can't we?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh, goodness gracious. Wow. Wow. I'm so encouraged. Your interview today was exactly what I needed. And you are a beacon of hope in your daily life, in your nonprofit, but also with your modeling of how to live a life full of joy against all odds. You saw the positive things and you kept moving, you kept running, you kept changing with the seasons, you kept adapting to external and internal ups and downs. And these are all the signs of not just of a survivor, but of a thriver. You basically put your dream, you crystallized that, made it crystal clear into a vision, and then you took steps, very practical steps, and you turned it into a mission. So you took action. And I think that is something that we all can learn from.
Now, I need to be very candid here that I made it sound as if it was easy. We simply started growing and growing. But for the first, you can imagine if you're in a small town and it's a white community, rural, conservative, and you're advertising or your word gets out that you're going to bring in felons from prison. And the assumption is they're always Black because race comes into all those discussions. And so there was petitions, there was protests, there was people going to city council, there were lawsuits, there were threats.
Wow.
At one point, we ended up suing the city 3 times just to remain open. And then at one point, a man stabbed me in front of the courthouse. And then people wrote to the newspaper offering to pay his bail so he could finish the job. True. But here's the point. those same people, what we determined to do was not respond to that, not respond. And every time when winter came, I would determine we are going to clean everyone's street on our block, and we're going to make our house, which is 150 years old, and you can see in the background, it's been remodeled. Well, we've tried to make it look as if it was the best house in the neighborhood. And eventually, it took years and years. Today, those same courts that were opposing us now refer us, their residents from jail, and we've been able to house their people and save the county taxpayers upwards of $1 million in jail money because they don't have to pay us. Our money comes from the state. So those same people who used to wave at us now wave with all their fingers, if you know what I mean.
Wow.
They were
Wow.
they waved in a very select way previously. In other words, you without preaching at people, we simply worked very hard to be a good neighbor, but it was a very hard thing to do to be the most. At one point, I was probably the most reviled man in the community, but we did what we knew to be right and never quit. That's the
Wow.
point.
Wow. Wow. Talk about determination. But then again, you raised one point. I mean, now that you mentioned the stabbing of yourself, now that is typically quite a when you come to the crossroads, when you have to say, okay, it's all quite nice to be idealistic, to be there for others, to be really this beacon of hope. But when it comes to you suffering, and not just maybe that you can't afford something really nice, a nice holiday somewhere, but actually literally suffering because someone has sliced you open. Well, that typically that would stop a lot of men. Why did you not stop then?
Yeah, there's a movie called Officer and a Gentleman,
Yeah.
and Richard Gere plays a part of this hard-ass character who's trying to prove himself as an individual, and he didn't think in terms of us. He thought in terms of me as an
Yeah.
officer. He wanted to be a fighter pilot,
Yeah.
and the drill sergeant pushed him and pushed him and pushed him to get him to break and to think like an officer and not like a lone wolf. And at the end, the officer, the drill sergeant said, "You got to quit. You got to quit. I'm going to force you to quit." And he broke this guy, Richard Gere, and he said, "I got nowhere to go. I can't quit." And truth is, that's probably how I was. I had nowhere else to go but what we were doing because I had lost everything. I had failed at so many things, and I couldn't give up on the one thing that I felt like was working. Now, working for me in helping somebody else. And because I had some critics, and there were few, I couldn't let the few deter me from helping what I felt to be my mission. I hate to use religious terms, but the truth is, it is a religious thing. But in the purest sense of the word, it's not. I'm not. It's not I'm not trying to save the world. I'm simply trying to help my little corner of the world in some way. And for me, it was this housing.
Beautiful. Wow. Okay. Wow. 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 But then again, you only know your true mission and your purpose in life once you're at rock bottom, once you are with the back against the wall, and there is no other way. There's a good saying that
There it is,
goes,
right there. Yeah.
you don't know how strong you can be until strong is the only option. And that is, I think, the truth for so many of us. And that is where we can rise to our true meaning, to our true purpose in life.
I'm very, very uncomfortable with the role the church has taken in politics, trying to impose our will on the community. I call it it's a Christian version of Sharia law, and
I like it.
and yeah, it's simply it's contrary to what we do best because we've forgotten the Spanish Inquisition. When we are in power, we are exactly the same as our critics, our persecutors. So, and be quite candid with you, when I was under the most pressure, when I was getting daily editorials, daily threats, I had police protection at one meeting. That's how intense it was. But and at that time, we were getting very little income. But the fact is that nothing was more clear as my mission and my role in that mission at that time. When it's most difficult is, I believe, it's when it's most clear if we keep our eyes on the prize. And I did a lot of studying with Dr. King, not literally, but through his writings. And I never forgot that, what they went through, and they were able to get through it and change their community and the world through their faith. And the best example of that is John Lewis, who, to the day he died, he called his enemies brother in Congress, because he did that to remind himself that he cannot go down to the same level to have enemies. They're always brothers. And I always try to remember that.
I need to challenge you, because I am like you. I feel exactly the same way, yet you are not alone. You have got a wife who is suffering with you. She is looking at her husband being stabbed with blood running out of him. She has got a fear for her life, for her sanity, for the safety of her children. How can a loved one stand by a strong man like you when her conviction might not be as strong? I mean, it's quite rare to find two people who have got the same drive and the same conviction. It's all quite nice when the sun shines, but when the wind howls and the storm breaks your windows, suddenly that looks very different.
And I think it comes down to our relationship, because both of us have gone through so much that when we came together, we're like two people who are with a limp and we're leaning on one another. And when we lean on one another, then we can walk straight. Otherwise, we're walking like this.
Yeah.
And so she is not just my partner, but my best friend. And also she's Irish Catholic, and she's probably the toughest broad I've ever met. So
Okay.
I have great sympathy for the 600 years the British put up with the Irish.
Ooh, my goodness. Okay, wow.
Trust me, she would say the same. But kidding aside, it is a partnership, and you're right. She was nervous, but it's the commitment. It was the commitment, and we both felt in one another a strength in one another.
It's beautiful, beautiful. John, you're an amazing man. Wow, I'm blown away by today's interview. I've had the privilege of looking behind your facade and seeing the passion and seeing the drive and seeing so much shining through your eyes. It was amazing. That was a gift for me today, and I'm very grateful for this gift. If other people feel the same and, for example, want to buy your book and find your book or know more about you and your nonprofit, tell me, where can they find you?
It's actually pretty simple. Good Samaritan Home is just goodsamaritanhome.org. And we're not looking for donations, but if we can help you in any way, feel free to contact us through the website. And the book is johndavidgraham.com. It's on Amazon, and you can easily download several free chapters and just take a look at it. Yeah. And if it helps you, then buy it. If you don't like it, then it'll help somebody else. And I'm not interested in book sales for money. I'm interested in this discussion. And we've sold many thousands of books already, but it's the reviews that I'm most motivated by, the reviews coming back that say, I felt this book. I felt like I was Daniel, and I have hope now after reading that. So if somebody were to be motivated to take one more step, one more day, then I would say, then it was worth the 10 years writing.
Beautiful, beautiful. Wow, guys, look down there into the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast because John's details and the book details are down there. Whilst you're down there, press the like and subscribe button so that indeed we get the algorithms triggering more people to find this interview, to be engaged, to be infused as much as I had the privilege of being today. So, John, thank you so much for being a guest on my show. This was phenomenal.
My pleasure. The truth is, I was dragging my butt too, and I'm going to go outside and I like to go sit in McDonald's parking lot with caffeine and just sit in the fall sun. And Kathy and I are going to go out and we're going to talk about this. And you've made my day, quite frankly.
Oh, thank you so much.
You really have.
And you guys out there, look after yourself and live with intention. Bye.
Thank you all.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.